I watched my wife Sarah stumble down those courthouse steps, clutching that manila envelope with shaking hands. $73. That's all she had left in her bank account. 8 years in state prison. Complete financial ruin. A lifetime restraining order preventing her from ever contacting me or my parents again. She'd spent 8 months systematically destroying my relationship with my elderly parents, manipulating them into changing their will, positioning herself to inherit over $1 million. She thought she was playing chess. She didn't realize I'd been playing 4D chess for months. I didn't look back as my car pulled away from the courthouse. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to drop a comment where you are watching from. 17 months ago, I was Michael Reynolds, successful financial advisor, devoted son, and what I thought was a happily married husband. I had a beautiful home in the suburbs, a thriving practice helping families plan their financial futures, and parents who had raised me to understand that family comes first, always. What I didn't know was that my wife Sarah had been planning my parents' financial exploitation for over a year. Every family dinner, every holiday visit, every moment of kindness from my mother and father, she was calculating its monetary value and planning how to claim it for herself. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was reviewing my home security system. We'd had some break-ins in the neighborhood, so I'd installed cameras throughout the house. I was just checking the footage when I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was Sarah, alone in my house while I was at work, on the phone in my kitchen. But it wasn't just any phone call. She was pacing, gesturing, speaking in hushed but animated tones. So I turned up the audio. "No, you don't understand," she was saying. "They're stubborn. Traditional. They think marriage means everything belongs to the husband. Yeah, I know we signed a prenup, but that was different. I was young, in love, stupid." She opened our refrigerator, pulled out a bottle of wine, and continued talking while she poured herself a glass. "The house alone is worth $1.2 million. Then there's the investment portfolio, the life insurance policies. We're talking $3 million minimum. No, Michael doesn't know. He thinks I'm the devoted daughter-in-law." Then she laughed. It was a cold sound I'd never heard from her before. "Trust me, by the time I'm done, those old people will think their precious son doesn't care about them anymore. And guess who'll be there to comfort them? Their loving daughter-in-law who really understands them." I sat in my office, staring at that recording, feeling like someone had punched me in the stomach. This woman I'd been married to for 6 years, who I'd trusted completely, who my parents adored, she was planning to manipulate and exploit them for money. But that was just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, I reviewed every single recording from those security cameras. What I discovered was a masterpiece of psychological manipulation that had been going on for months. Sarah had been systematically creating situations designed to make my parents feel neglected, forgotten, and unimportant. She was intercepting their phone calls, telling them I was too busy to talk. She was canceling our dinner plans at the last minute, claiming I had work emergencies that didn't exist. She was meeting my mother for coffee and subtly suggesting that I seemed distant lately, and asking leading questions like, "He used to call you every Sunday, didn't he?" The woman was patient. Methodical. Each planted seed was small, believable. She never directly criticized me, she just redirected conversations, made suggestions, asked questions that led my parents to their own painful conclusions. I watched footage of her sitting with my mother, looking concerned and caring, saying things like, "People change when they get successful, Margaret. Michael's under so much pressure at work." When my mother would express worry about our relationship, Sarah would sigh dramatically and say, "I've tried to remind him about family, but you know how men are. They get focused on their careers and forget what's really important." But the worst part, the part that made me realize this wasn't just greed, but genuine cruelty, was watching her show my mother fake text messages. Sarah would pull out her phone and show my mom what appeared to be conversations where I was dismissive or uncaring. "Look," she'd say, "I sent him a reminder about your doctor's appointment. See? He didn't even respond. Except I checked. Those texts were never sent." She was using a fake text app to create false evidence of my neglect. The doctor's appointment she was referring to? I had taken a half-day from work to drive my parents there personally. But when I arrived at their house, my mother told me Sarah had called to say I was too busy and couldn't make it. Sarah had driven them herself. I called the doctor's office. Sarah had requested that all future appointments be scheduled through her, claiming she was now their primary caregiver because their son was unreliable. That was her first major mistake. You don't mess with someone's medical care. That's when I knew this wasn't just manipulation, this was elder abuse. And that's when I decided Sarah was going to get exactly what she deserved. You see, what Sarah didn't know about me was that my successful financial advisor career had included 5 years working with the FBI's white-collar crime division, specializing in elder fraud and inheritance scams. I knew exactly what she was doing because I'd seen it dozens of times before. I also knew exactly how to document it, prosecute it, and destroy the person doing it. Sarah had picked the wrong target. I spent the next week setting up professional surveillance equipment throughout my parents' house, with their permission, of course. They thought it was for security after those neighborhood break-ins. What it actually did was record every single word of Sarah's manipulation campaign in high-definition audio and video. Then I called Detective Maria Santos, someone I'd worked with during my FBI days who now specialized in elder abuse cases. I also contacted Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Morse, who had prosecuted some of the cases I'd worked on. I told them what was happening and asked for their help in building a case. "How long has this been going on?" Detective Santos asked after reviewing the initial evidence. "Based on what I've uncovered, at least 8 months. Probably longer." She slid a thick folder across her desk. "Phone records show she's been in contact with your parents' doctors, their bank, their attorney, and a social worker she contacted claiming concern about their isolated living situation." Social worker. She reported that you'd been neglecting their needs. Suggested they might need assisted living. She volunteered to help with the transition and manage their finances during the move. My blood went cold. If she succeeds in getting them declared in need of assisted care, and if she's appointed as their guardian or power of attorney. She controls everything, Detective Santos finished. The house, the investments, the inheritance. And if something happens to them while they're under her care. She didn't need to finish that sentence. That's when I realized Sarah wasn't just trying to steal an inheritance. She was systematically isolating 2 elderly people from their only child so she could control every aspect of their lives. This wasn't greed, this was predatory elder abuse on a massive scale. So I made a decision. I was going to give Sarah exactly what she was working so hard to achieve. But not the way she expected. Over the next 3 months, I documented everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every forged document, every fake text message. I recorded her conversations with estate attorneys where she researched how to contest wills and establish herself as a primary beneficiary through demonstrated care and commitment. I watched as she convinced my father to meet with attorney James Watson to discuss updating their estate plans. I listened as she planted seeds of doubt about my character, my commitment to family, my trustworthiness. Family is about actions, not blood, she told my father during one recorded conversation. You and Margaret have seen who's really been there for you. My father, this 82-year-old World War II veteran, Purple Heart recipient, successful businessman, was being manipulated by a woman who had spent months systematically destroying his relationship with his son. But at 82, with mild cognitive decline setting in, he was vulnerable to someone who had built his trust while poisoning his most important relationship. The day my father signed the new will, reducing my inheritance from 80% to 30% while giving Sarah 40%, I was listening to every word through the surveillance equipment I'd placed in his study weeks earlier. "This protects us if Michael decides to contest," my father said sadly. "Dad, don't think of it as protection from Michael," Sarah responded quickly. "Think of it as rewarding the people who've actually shown they care. I never thought I'd need to protect myself from my own son. Family is about actions, not blood. You and Margaret have seen who's really been there for you." Listening to my father say those words, believing that his son didn't love him, that he needed to protect himself from me, was one of the most painful moments of my life. But it was also the moment I knew Sarah had signed her own destruction warrant. Because what Sarah didn't realize was that changing the will based on lies and manipulation wasn't just morally wrong, it was legally actionable fraud. And I had recorded every single lie she told to make it happen. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted to catch her in the act of actually stealing their money, not just positioning herself to inherit it. So I waited. Sarah's next move was predictable. She started talking to my parents about simplifying their lives by moving to assisted living. She brought brochures, talked about the burden of maintaining their house, managing their finances. She offered to handle all the financial transitions for them. "Think of how much easier your life would be," she told my mother during one recorded conversation. "No financial stress, no complicated paperwork." She presented them with power of attorney documents, suggesting they get the paperwork ready for when they were ready to make the transition. My mother, who had spent months believing her son didn't love her anymore, was vulnerable to someone offering to take care of everything. She started signing preliminary paperwork. But Sarah made another crucial mistake. She started taking photos of my parents' bank statements with her phone. Document theft. She was also researching quick liquidation investment strategies, planning to convince them to sell assets for better security and transfer the money to accounts she could access. Detective Santos and I watched all of this through live surveillance feeds. "She's building toward the big theft," Santos told me. "Probably within the next 2 weeks. How much longer do we let this go?" I asked. "Until she actually moves their money. We need her to commit the felony theft, not just attempt it. What if something happens to my parents in the meantime? We'll move immediately if they're in any physical danger. But right now, she needs them alive and functional to access their money. They're safe." Meanwhile, Sarah was getting bolder. She started suggesting that maybe she and I needed some time apart while I figured out my priorities. She moved out of our house to stay with her sister, claiming she needed space to think about our marriage. What she was really doing was positioning herself as the only reliable caregiver for my parents while removing herself from any appearance of financial motive related to our marriage. But I was 3 steps ahead of her. The day after Sarah moved out, I sat down with my parents and played them the recordings. All of them. Every manipulation, every lie, every fake text message, every cruel calculation. Watching my parents' faces as they realized what had been done to them was heartbreaking. My mother cried for 2 hours. My father, this tough old veteran, just sat in stunned silence. "She made me believe you didn't love us anymore," my mother finally said. "Mom, I have called you every Sunday for 3 years straight. Sarah was intercepting the calls and telling you I was too busy." "The will," my father said. "We changed the will based on lies. We can fix that, Dad. But first, I need your help to make sure Sarah never does this to another family." That's when I explained the plan. Sarah was going to try to move their money within the next week. When she did, we were going to catch her in the act and have her arrested for elder abuse, financial fraud, and theft. My parents, despite everything they'd been through, didn't hesitate. "What do you need us to do?" my mother asked. "Just act normal when she visits. Don't let on that you know what she's been doing. Let her think her plan is working." My father straightened up, his old military bearing returning. "You want us to help you catch her. I want you to help me make sure she never does this to another family. What's the plan?" 4 days later, Sarah came to my parents' house with financial documents transferring their liquid investments to a managed care account. My mother signed with shaking hands while I listened through surveillance equipment. "This just transfers your liquid investments to a managed care account," Sarah explained. "It'll make everything so much easier." "It's a lot of money, Sarah," my mother said hesitantly. "Maybe I should wait for Michael." "Margaret, Michael had his chance to be involved in your care. He made his priorities clear." Sarah pulled out her phone and showed my mother another fabricated text conversation, claiming I hadn't responded to messages about medical appointments. "I suppose you're right," my mother said sadly, and signed the documents. Sarah immediately took photos of the signatures with her phone, then left to process the paperwork. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, my mother called me. "It's done. She has the account information." 2 hours later, Sarah walked into First National Bank with forged power of attorney documents and a fake doctor's letter claiming my parents needed professional care management. She requested an immediate transfer of $847,000 to an account she controlled. "This is a substantial transfer," the bank manager said. "Are you sure the account holders understand?" Mr. Chen, Frank and Margaret are 82 and 79 years old respectively. They're confused, frightened, and need professional care management. This is exactly why they granted me power of attorney. What Sarah didn't know was that Mr. Chen had been contacted by Detective Santos that morning. Every word of this conversation was being recorded, and FBI agents were positioned throughout the bank. The moment Sarah completed the fraudulent transfer, she was arrested. "Sarah Mitchell, you're under arrest for elder abuse, financial fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft." I was standing across the street, watching as they put handcuffs on the woman who had spent 8 months terrorizing my elderly parents for money. As they read her rights, she looked around desperately and saw me. "Michael," she screamed. "Michael. You don't understand. I was protecting them from you." I didn't respond. I simply got in the FBI vehicle and drove away. The investigation revealed even more than I had suspected. During the search of Sarah's belongings, they found detailed financial plans showing how she intended to liquidate all of my parents' assets within 6 months of gaining control. They found research into assisted living facilities where residents routinely signed over complete financial control to their caregivers. They found communications with other estate attorneys, suggesting this wasn't her first attempt at inheritance manipulation. Most damning of all, they found evidence that Sarah had run similar schemes twice before. An elderly neighbor in her previous city who had signed over power of attorney and lost $200,000 before family members intervened. A widower she had dated who changed his will in her favor before his children became suspicious and threatened legal action. My parents weren't just her most ambitious target, they were part of a pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable elderly people. Sarah was charged with 7 felonies: elder abuse, financial fraud, document forgery, conspiracy to commit theft, identity theft, mail fraud, and filing false reports with government agencies. Her attorney tried to argue that she was just a devoted daughter-in-law concerned about my parents' welfare. The prosecution played hours of recorded audio where Sarah discussed her plans to manipulate and exploit them for money. Her attorney tried to claim the recordings were illegally obtained. The judge ruled that surveillance equipment installed in my parents' home with their explicit consent was completely legal. Her attorney tried to argue that the power of attorney documents were legitimate. The prosecution showed evidence that every single document was obtained through fraudulent misrepresentation and forged supporting evidence. The trial lasted 6 days. The jury deliberated for 47 minutes. Sarah was sentenced to 8 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for the first 4 years. She was ordered to pay full restitution of $73,000 in legal and investigative fees. A lifetime restraining order was issued preventing her from contacting me or my parents ever again. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Thanks to our prenuptial agreement, the same one she had spent months researching how to contest, she received exactly what she brought into the marriage: nothing. Her attorney tried to argue that she deserved compensation for caring for my elderly parents. The judge's response was that criminals don't get paid for their crimes, and that Sarah's care was actually systematic abuse designed to facilitate theft. Sarah lost everything. Her freedom, her marriage, her financial security, her reputation, and any possibility of future financial stability. The felony convictions ensure she'll never be able to work in financial services, healthcare, or any position involving vulnerable populations. But here's what makes this a perfect ending: my parents used the money Sarah tried to steal to establish a scholarship fund for students studying elder care and social work. They wanted something positive to come from their experience. Frank and Margaret Reynolds, at 83 and 80, are now advocates for elder abuse prevention. They speak at community centers, warning other seniors about the exact tactics Sarah used against them. They've spoken to over 2,000 people about how to recognize and prevent elder manipulation. They turned their victimization into a mission to protect others. That's who they really are, not the frightened, confused people Sarah tried to make them believe they were. As for me, I learned that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones most capable of betrayal. But I also learned that real family, the kind built on genuine love and respect, can survive any attack. I'm now married to Elena Vasquez, a social worker who specializes in elder care. We met through my parents' advocacy work. She understands the importance of family, the value of genuine care, and the difference between love and manipulation. We live 3 blocks from my parents and visit every Sunday after church. We play cards, share stories, and my mother still tries to feed everyone too much food. Elena has seen my parents' medical records, knows their financial situation, understands their care needs, and has never once suggested that she should manage their money or make their healthcare decisions. That's the difference between someone who loves your family and someone who wants to exploit them. Sarah thought she was playing a sophisticated game of manipulation and greed. What she didn't realize was that she was actually participating in a master class on consequences. Every choice has a price. Sarah chose greed over love, manipulation over honesty, exploitation over care. She paid the price for those choices with 8 years of her life and the loss of everything she tried so hard to steal. I chose patience over anger, justice over revenge, and protection over pride. The price I paid was 8 months of watching my parents suffer while I built the case that would save them and prevent Sarah from victimizing anyone else. But here's what Sarah never understood: some things are worth any price. Family is worth protecting. Love is worth fighting for. And justice is worth waiting for. She wanted to know how a 58-year-old man destroyed her carefully planned scheme. Simple. I remembered what she forgot: that real power isn't about manipulation or control. Real power is about having people who trust you completely because you've earned that trust through your actions, not your words. Sarah bet everything on her ability to make people believe lies about me. I bet everything on 30 years of truth, consistency, and genuine love for my parents. Truth won. It always does. 6 months ago, I received a letter from Sarah in prison. She claimed she had found God and wanted to make amends. She asked me to visit her, said she had things to explain that would help me understand her actions. I didn't respond to the letter. Not because I haven't forgiven her, but because forgiveness doesn't require enabling someone's continued manipulation. Even from prison, Sarah was trying to control the narrative, trying to find a way to make her actions seem justified or understandable. There is no justification for what she did. There is no acceptable explanation for terrorizing elderly people to steal their money. There is no version of this story where Sarah is the victim. She made her choices. She earned her consequences. And somewhere out there, there are elderly families who are safer because Sarah Mitchell is in prison instead of targeting their parents and grandparents. That's what real justice looks like. Not revenge, not cruelty, not emotional satisfaction, just consequences that fit the crime and protection for future victims. The game is over. And everyone got exactly what they deserved. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and drop a comment where you are watching from.